Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about the top 10 books on my TBR. This was so hard to figure out because I don't know what I want my top 10 books to really be. Usually I just pull from my shelf and see which ones I want to read. So making a list of top 10 books to read was very difficult. Now these books are in no particular order from 1 to 10 or 10 to 1. They are just books that I feel that really need to get read and off of my TBR shelf. The first book I have is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I have read this before, but it was like the children's version of it. I think a lot of this has been cut out from that because I recently found it and kind of flipped through it. The writing was huge and it's not very big in this. So I think a lot has been cut out from that and I missed so much. So I really want to get into this because I want to see what has been taken out of this book to put in that children's version. The next book is another classic and is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. My mom recently found this book and I'm so glad she did. It is absolutely gorgeous. I love it and I've seen the movie for this, but I have never read the book. So, and I want to do it. I've heard it's very dark for a girl of her age at this time of writing this to write and in this time period. It fascinates me. The beginning of this book, it is a lot about the author, a lot about how the book was created, and I am very intrigued by how she came to write Frankenstein. Another book I have here is One Darkthrone by Kendara Blake. I loved the first book. This most definitely is one of my top 10 books. I know that for sure. I know it's one of the top books I want to read this year. The cover is gorgeous. I love Kendara's writing. I love how she created the world of the three sisters, each with a different power, and them having to compete for the throne. I really hope I choose this for my TBR in the next couple months. The next book I have here is Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. I have not read Empire Storms, but I am more eager to read this one than I am that one. But I have to read that one before I can read this one. But I need to reread the whole series before I can even get into these two. I have forgot everything. It's been several years since I've read them, and I can't even believe it's been that long since I've read the books. And I really want to read this one because it has my favorite character in it, even though he had such a rough time, or he acted very crudely in the books before. The next book I would love to read this year is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I have already read this book. That was in 7th grade when I wasn't much into reading, and I could not get into this, very sadly. And I just recently had a discussion with about this book, and I kind of agree. This book, it has a lot of info dumping and a lot of world building, a lot of character building. And the person I talked to said that for this book, it takes a lot to get into. And for a 7th grader to read this book may be kind of difficult for them to get into, especially when they're not used to reading. Yes, I think this is a very good book. But at that time, it was not a good book for me to read. It was required reading. We had to read certain chapters over a couple days, and then we had to read it, or write about it, discuss it in class, and it's just, I mean, it was good. But at that time, it was not good for me to read. And I want to read it now, and I really hope I will enjoy it more than I did in 7th grade. I mean, This is the same exact cover and everything as the book I read in 7th grade. The book I had, I could tell was used over and over and over again. It was completely torn up. It was pretty pitiful looking, but that's because so many people have had to read it in that class, and I think that's great that it was read so much in class, but at the same time, I think that that's just an unpopular opinion of mine. If you think it should be read at a higher grade than 7th grade, or do you think 7th grade would be fine? If you had to have this to be required reading, let me know, because in my school we did. But I do want to read this year again to see my thoughts and feelings about it, because my thoughts and feelings about it in 7th grade were just meh. Another book I want to read is The Demon King. I want to read this whole entire series, and it's all by Cinda Williams-Chima. I've heard this is a very, very good series, and I think this series, from what I've heard from certain people, is underrated. I've heard that more people should read this. I don't hear many people talking about it. And when I do hear, they say it's absolutely amazing. So I really want to get into this, to start it and see how her writing style is and what kind of world she has created. Another book on my top 10 TBR is This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. I got this in an Outcrate box, and I was so excited to get it because I've heard it's so good. I started reading it, but then put it down for another book that I can't remember what it was because it's been so long since I've picked this up. But I want to get back into it. I've heard it's so good, and she's already come out with the second book, so I need to read it too, hopefully if I like this. But I love it because it has music involved, and I love music. I love the violin. Being someone that played a string instrument, to read about someone that plays a string instrument would maybe have some nostalgic feelings of mine. Take me back to my orchestra years. But besides that, I've heard this is very, very dark. A very wonderful read, and I am so glad to have it in my possession. Another book that's on my top 10 is Cress by Marissa Meyer. Yes, I have not finished this series, and that's because I was waiting on winter, but I do have it now, so I am going to finish this series this year. I absolutely love the first 2 books. I love the way Marissa Meyer has created this world, the sci-fi world of our favorite fairy tale characters, and wove them in with futuristic items. I am excited and very curious to see her take on Rapunzel and her take on Snow White. So this and Winter I'm mushing them together into one. They're both on my top 10. The next book I have on my top 10 TBR is Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. I want to read this because I've had it far too long. I've started it twice and have put it down. Mainly because I have found other stuff to read, and this book is just so big and it intimidates me. But I do want to read this year and continue on with the series. And the last book that I have here is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This is on most definitely like the top of my top 10 TBR. It's actually on my TBR for the month of February. I hope to have already started this by the time this video goes up, but it's a pretty big book, and I'm very excited for it because it's such high fantasy and magic, and I love it all. I've heard this is such a good book, such a great read, and I'm excited to have it, and yeah, it's way up there on my TBR. Here are all the books that are on my top 10 TBR, I think, as of right now, that I really want to read. Oh, it's killing my arm. But here they all are. I'm very happy to own these. And, I mean, I own them, so I have no excuse not to get into them. And I think they're all beautiful books. Beautiful covers, beautiful everything. And thank you, authors, for writing these books. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know down in the comments, what are your top 10 TBR for this year, and I will talk to you later in another video. Bye!